It has become tradition here on Valliant Renegade that we try to put Hollywood through the business and financial lens of reality. And sometimes we like to bring in friends and guests to help us have these types of high-level conversations. You've been enjoying them for months with friends like Cameron Pasha. Well, now, today, I have a new friend to introduce to you all, somebody that many of you may be familiar with. Somebody that runs an excellent website called thatparkplace.com. Somebody who has become a very good confidant and ally here in the fight to save pop culture. Somebody who pulls no punches in the reporting. And somebody who today, for the first time, is taking a small step out from behind the curtain. Please help me welcome aboard my friend, WDW Pro. Renegade Online. All right, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valliant Renegade, and with me, the one and only WDW Pro of thatparkplace.com. We are so thrilled to have you here. Welcome aboard to the show.
Well, first of all, it is a great pleasure to be here with you, Valliant Renegade, or should I say Mr. Renegade. And we just want to say thank you from That Park Place, from all the writers, for all the great work that you do. It is an honor to be on your show as the first show in which the audience can hear my voice rather than just reading the words behind the text. So kudos to you, sir.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate you agreeing to do this, wanting to do this. This is something I think a lot of people are going to be interested in. So I want to give you a moment, talk a little bit about the website, talk a little bit about That Park Place, tell folks the kind of stuff you have on there for those that might not have become, very familiar with it.
So That Park Place is a website where we document all the news that should be fun. Of course, all rumors and leaks and that sort of thing. We have lots of fun articles, but we try to cover news about theme parks, entertainment, games, shows, streaming, all that stuff that is important, but that is also fun. So we don't handle the news as in terms of politics. We don't handle the news in terms of ongoing world situation deterioration. We cover the things that you want to do, and you wait and go and have fun with those things, whether that is waiting to go home at the end of the day to watch that favorite streaming show, or whether that is waiting until the summer when you can get down there and get your Dole Whip. That's the news we want to cover.
And which is great. And you guys do a great job. You seem to have a wonderful staff of writers covering all different sorts of topics. You've built a tremendous team there, it seems. And it seems like it's still growing. Am I right?
It's been a lot of fun. We are continuing to grow exponentially. Viewership continues to go up, and we are thankful for every reader that we get. We actually do read the comments, and we do engage our readers, and so it's been a great experience.
You do, and that's one thing I've noticed about the website that is different from a lot of others, is that you guys really do try to tend to, as much as you can at least, and being a YouTuber, I understand how difficult that can be sometimes, but you guys really do try to respond to as many of those things as you can, at least the ones that aren't just trolling. We get those too, trust me. And
I also want to say before we get started that it's no accident that we're choosing your channel as the one that I will come on for the very first time, premiering my voice. We're thrilled with your channel and with the information you present and the way you present it. And so we join you in recommending this channel as one that others will subscribe to and follow and enjoy the content that you provide.
Are you going to get me blushing in the first 3 minutes of this? Okay, good.
You'll never see if I'm blushing or not. It stays the same for me.
I know. You see, you get to hide behind. This all has to come out for me.
The joy of anonymity.
I know, quite, isn't it? Maybe I look into that, but I think it's too late at this point. But no, that's wonderful, and I really do appreciate this. Very kind words. And again, like we talked about on the phone, we try to do something a little bit different here. I saw a lot of other YouTube channels and great channels that do great work. I just didn't feel like I don't want to duplicate what everybody else is doing. I would try to take my professional experience and apply it to some of the same topics, but come at it from a different angle. And one of the things that we love talking about, and this is one of the reasons why, early on I discovered you, over your various places throughout the years was, the rumor side of things, especially when it comes to Disney. And that's one thing that you have become, I guess, notorious for lack of better words. And you have a tremendous track record with the information that you've been able to procure from your sources, publish in various places, but now on thatparkplace.com. And I think you have about a 90% accuracy rating, if I'm not mistaken.
So my detractors will despise you for saying so, but
too bad.
But I will say, without being too braggadocious, that during the pandemic, I was able to keep about an 87% success rate, which is quite difficult considering how quickly things can change behind the scenes. The last year, that accuracy rating was actually a little bit higher. This year, it's a little bit lower than the 87%. So it is impossible to break new information and to report on rumors and leaks without sometimes being wrong, because things change behind the scenes, and that's just part of the game.
That is a key element, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I have had to remind folks that over the year or so that I've been on YouTube, when they want to chastise a leaker or an insider, or chastise another YouTube channel for saying, oh, this person turned out to be wrong on this, and exactly what you just said, the best that you folks can do is to convey the information at the time that it's given to you. And things may change, and a lot of times they do, but that doesn't mean that the information was any less accurate at the moment you received it on good faith from the source.
So I am going to give a tip on how your viewers can spot those people who are creating their own rumors and leaks in order to grow. So I'm going to give a little tip on that.
Awesome.
The tip that I would say is that you need to watch for people who create sensational celebrity rumors that then turn out to not be true over time. Because some of these influencers, some of the people you're going to find on Twitter who maybe they get things right 30% of the time, and then they memory hold the rest of it. The vast majority of their rumors are going to be about celebrities, because they know that's what trends. They know that's what picks up all of the excitement. You want to look, if you're trying to find people who really can give you information early, you want to look for people who sometimes have boring information. If they are providing sometimes boring information, that means that they're reporting on the mundane that's happening behind the scenes. And then there's the 10% of the time that those individuals have something really sensational and groundbreaking. And based on a track record, then over time, you can determine, okay, this person has the information. And also, don't discount that sometimes there are people who themselves are not necessarily insiders, but who have contacts, sources throughout whatever company they're reporting on. And so you have to just watch over time and see what their percentage is. Even your weatherman, I know this is a shock to so many people, but even the weatherman doesn't get it right all the time. And so you want to just see, if, for example, if somebody's getting 50% right, that's better than somebody who has no idea what's going on. The percentage of someone being right over time would be very, very small if they didn't have some sort of source or contact that they can use.
Yeah, that's great information, and I hope everybody takes that to heart, because like you said, there are so many people out there that do that, and I think that's a great observation to see the types of rumors that they tend to gravitate around themselves can often be a clue. So on that, and again, this is one of the conversations that you and I were having on the phone, and we thought this would be a fun place to start, because I don't think many people have talked about this that much. And you are somebody that has, over time, proven yourself to have, again, a very good track record, very good information, and it has strung together quite nicely as time has gone on. And some things, of course, we may not see come to fruition for weeks, months, years down the road. But one of the things that has been fascinating is your reporting on, a lot of the history between Iger and Disney, and now Chapek and Disney, the differences between those two gentlemen. And recently, Robert Iger did an interview that was published on a television show on Apple TV Plus, The Problem with Jon Stewart. And we had this recent episode called The Media, and Jon Stewart had on none other than Robert Iger. And I'm going to pause that for a second. It queues up automatically when I throw it on the screen. So, Pro, you saw this interview. Before we get too much into it, as far as watching a few things, I want to get your impressions of what you saw.
Well, so the way that I would start off is I would permission to enter the speculative just for a moment.
Granted.
All right. So in the speculative, I believe that given the expediency that the Disney leadership had at the beginning of the pandemic when Iger switched over to Chapek, it seems to me that Iger saw the writing on the wall that there was that there were headwinds ahead, and so he wanted to get out of that and preserve his legacy, thinking that Bob Chapek would not be as successful as he would be. I think that Chapek is selected by the board, and he is very much part of the investor crew in Disney, not necessarily part of the creatives. Now, why that's important is because, in my opinion, I think that Iger thought that Chapek would not succeed, and therefore he was not interested in having a protege take that place. What happened was that Disney Plus became phenomenally successful. And Disney Plus became phenomenally successful because of the timing with the pandemic, which is not conspiratorial, but is simply to say that Disney, they rolled the best dice they could, right? They pulled up double six. So Chapek receives the windfall of that success. But Iger wants to be seen as the guy who navigated Disney. And clearly, Iger, up until the last 2 or 3 years of his leadership, is one of the most highly regarded CEOs of the last 30 years in America. Flat out, he's fantastic. He picks up Pixar, he picks up Marvel. He's fantastic. What happened towards the end of that is that Iger had political ambitions. And so he began to make decisions and choices as both the head of the board and as the CEO. He began to make decisions that would move Disney to the left so that he would have a route or a route that he could take for going into a presidential campaign, potentially, or also into the ambassadorship for China. Now, understanding all of that now Iger has a bruised ego to some degree because he's leaving the company. The stock is shooting through the roof. Imagine how that must feel. And Chapek is not necessarily the guy that matches his personality type or his ideology. Remember this too. When Chapek begins to guide the Disney company, he's doing so in a very apolitical way. So you've got all of these things surrounding Iger when he's preparing to do this interview. And I think we talked about before we came on today that this was taken probably shortly after Iger had stepped down. So he's wanting to protect his legacy. And that's the whole point, I think, in him agreeing to come on with Jon Stewart and do a piece on the objectivity of the news. I mean, think about it. So ponder this. Iger does not need fame. He has all the fame he could want. There's no need for him to appear on this if he just wants to increase his fame. He also is not selling a product. Narrow down why he would want to appear with Jon Stewart. Then consider what is the topic that they are covering. They're covering the objectivity of the news. Iger and his people likely think that this interview is going to give him the opportunity to present himself as the wise sage who navigated ABC News under his tutelage so that it was an objective news source surrounded by other entities which were not objective, i.e., perhaps CNN, perhaps Fox News. But Iger is wanting to present himself as the captain who kept the ship straight. And he's doing that, in my opinion, again, so that a comparison can be drawn between him and Chapek, who he knows is going to face trouble once the dust settles from how well Disney Plus is doing as a result of the pandemic and people being forced to stay in their homes and watch a streaming service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree. Put it simply, he definitely, and we can see that in this interview. And let me play a little bit of this real quick, and I want you to comment because I think this was fascinating, especially after everything you just said. And I agree. Chapek's a very different guy than what Iger was. Iger was, like you said, he was trying to use Disney as a tool to further a political ambition, which obviously to this point has not come to fruition, and it may never. We don't know. But this is kind of how this started, and this is, Jon Stewart even makes the comment here that he had asked a number of people to come on and do this, and then Iger was the only one that agreed to do it. So exactly. In terms of being the head of a news organization. So let's watch this, and we can only play a few seconds at a time, of course, folks out there, just for copyright issues.
News organizations, there's a sense that they are being scrutinized and being criticized in a way that they've never experienced before. And I think there's a bit of a bunker mentality that has set in. Mm-hmm. But I think it's very, very hard when you're constantly being criticized by...
Who would criticize the news? Who would do such a...
So, I mean, Stewart's trying to keep the interview as light as possible in the beginning, but he really starts challenging Iger after a few minutes here.
So I'm going to say that I love where you have paused this video, because this is going to provide your viewers with an excellent display of what we're trying to demonstrate. Mm-hmm. Look at the posture and the facial expression of Robert Iger. This is a man who is comfortable in this moment. He has come on with his talking points ready to go. He is ready to talk about how the news, specifically the news that he headed, that news is being victimized by people who are being critical of it. But it's great. The news is fantastic. ABC News is great. And he thinks that he's in friendly territory. He thinks that Jon Stewart has his back, and this is going to be a typical interview where he is going to be allowed to do his talking points. And he is not going to have to deal with topics or issues that are going to put him in an uncomfortable position. And
exactly.
Before we continue, let me just say this. Mm-hmm. I don't know, we haven't discussed which parts you're going to show, but I want everybody to understand that there's a game that will be played. And the game that will be played in this interview is that after this moment, Jon Stewart is going to begin pushing back and asking questions that go beyond the facade. When he does so, you're going to see Iger shift, because Iger understands that the game is now different. And he's also going to understand that this game could go very badly for him. Here's why. If Stewart is willing to go places that Iger doesn't want to go, Iger has to sit there and wonder, why am I on camera at a time when this guy can take me out? Because he doesn't know, because Stewart's already gone rogue a little bit. Mm-hmm. So then the question's going to be, how rogue will he go? Will he go after the fact that a certain famous person who shall not be named, who owned an infamous island where illicit activities occurred, will he bring up that individual had the story squashed by ABC News, purposefully so, and was allowed to continue operating illicitly for years, and that ABC News had self-interest in not reporting that because it would have connected said individual with certain persons in leadership at Disney, as well as would have caused damage to ABC News being able to cover the royals in England. Stewart can go there. Iger knows he can go there. There are other things that Stewart can do. There are other things he can bring up. Stewart can bring up slave labor in China. He can bring up Disney's ties to the Chinese Communist Party. He can go places that Iger really, really does not want to go. And so during this interview, the game is that Stewart knows that, Iger knows that, and the two men are looking at each other with Iger wondering, what have I gotten into, and do I get out of this unscathed?
And part of me wonders before they go in, and I know it's fairly common fare with these type of interviews that they usually come to some kind of agreement. This is what we can talk about. This is what's off the table. But then again, like you said, with a guy like Jon Stewart, you never know.
That's right. But
yeah,
you will see in the eyes of Bob Iger when we leave the agreement.
Yeah. And part of that starts here because you can see Stewart, after he turns around and makes his joke, he's ramping up. And watch this.
Such a thing. That's terrible. All right. It's my fault. But you know what was interesting? The people that we talked to would all say, well, you know, you gotta deliver the ratings. They call them.
You can see here, he's already getting a little bit, he doesn't look as comfortable quite as he did a minute ago.
He has the face of somebody who is paying very close attention now. Mm-hmm. He is zoned in on what is about to be said, because I think that they have left the familiar that he was prepared for.
I wonder what was, because these kind of interviews, things get edited out, right? We're not seeing this necessarily. This wasn't a 15-minute start to finish, one take, boom. There were probably things that were discussed that were cut out. And you kind of have to wonder, to what end was this going? But let me scroll up to where some of the later question comes in, because I think this is where
there's the paralyzed turtle motion that we've seen. That is very rare to see Bob Iger position himself that way, because that is the position of a man who wants out of his environment that he is currently in.
Yeah, and let's see what it was that Stewart asked him that prompted that body language change.
I mean, if you're asking whether there have been incidents when news organizations fail to carry things because they don't think they'll be of interest to their audience, I'm sure that's the case.
I'm not saying incidents.
But
I'm saying that's been shaping.
You think it's a regular thing.
And not told in the right way.
Should know about it not being.
Yeah, he's real uncomfortable now.
Well, he's not only uncomfortable, but they're talking about something that he officially cannot admit, but that every person who has watched the news for the past 3 years knows must be true.
Yeah.
Because the news must be curated. Now think about this. So the average person may be wondering what this is all about. You cannot cover the full gamut of all entertainment business news. That Park Place cannot cover the full gamut of all the news related to theme parks, TV shows, etc.
Right.
At any news organization, the news organization must decide what gets on. And not only that, so it's not only that there's a certain amount of bandwidth that the news can go through, but it's also that the news determines for its audience what is valuable. It does so by rank ordering the news. And so what gets the front page headline? What gets the largest portion of the text? What gets the big image? When it comes to CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, what gets the top of the hour story?
Mm-hmm.
The news organization does that. They are rank ordering how they value the things that are occurring in this world. Iger knows that. Iger knows that it is implicit in any news organization that they must determine what news is important and what news isn't important. He is, and for whatever reason, he may have gotten stuck here, but he begins to argue against that the news doesn't do that, and therefore it is objective. And then he's going to begin to have to reverse that as Stewart presses him more and more.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens, is that he just really doesn't let him get away with it.
There have been incidents when news organizations fail to carry things because they don't think they'll be of interest to
just
their
way
audience.
back in that
I'm
chair.
sure that's the case.
I'm not saying incidents.
But
I'm saying that's been
you think it's a
shaping.
Contrast that to Stewart, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at the open posture that Stewart has. Stewart is very comfortable.
Yeah, he is, and Iger is trying to do his best to match it. I mean, but he's going from that, and he's coming back down, and he gets a little bit more relaxed. But then as soon as Stewart punches him with another question like that he feels like, where are we going with this?
Well, and let's compare that to what? Okay, so we all know natural human behavior because we're all humans and we all interact with others. We all know that when we get into a serious conversation where we are sharing back and forth and we're really engaged and nobody has the walls up, one of the postures that you'll take is that you'll lean forward, and you do so in a way that is still open. So you put your hands on your knees, for example, and you lean way forward and you really think and you really ponder. Or maybe you look up to the sky, but you're still engaged and you lean back. But we're looking at Iger. He is demonstrating none of that. Mm-hmm. He's trying to stay level with Stewart. But he is not used to this situation. This is not something that would happen to him regularly, publicly. Maybe behind closed doors he gets pushback. But publicly, he has not received pushback in a very long time.
Yeah, no, dead on. And it continues through this. And I don't know if we need to go through the entire thing, only because, again, I've got to be careful with the copyright strike issue stuff. But needless to say that this does go back and forth. And here's a great shot of Jon Stewart looking 10 times more comfortable than Iger does during this whole thing. He brings up a lot of other issues about news media organizations and things like this. Of course, they specifically have to call out Fox News and Roger Ailes. Well,
now think about that, though. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of the interview, mm-hmm. Iger comes in with a goal. The goal is to present ABC News as objective. And during the interview, he talks about how, oh no, the news is objective. And the news is just being victimized by the amount of information that is out there. So you've got all of these new journalists on YouTube or on Twitter or on these blogs. And that's the problem. The problem is that they are creating content which is subpar in comparison to ABC News. And that's the issue. By the end of the interview, he's forced to go to what he really knows is the truth. And he's saying, oh, well, these other news sources are not objective. Fox News went out into the conservative sphere, and then the other news networks on cable, they've swapped over to the left as counter programming. And he takes a completely 180. It's a complete 180 position. Yep. And what Iger doesn't want to say, and which I think is very true. And so this gets to the heart of what you're doing. This gets to the heart of what that Park Place is doing. It is important for the news and for the dissemination of information that is accurate. It is important mm-hmm. that news sources be different. It is important that there be all types of news that are reporting all different types of news, because what we talked about before, every news organization has to rank order the news that they select. Okay.
Yes.
If you have a monolith, if you have one or two or three, and they mentioned Walter Cronkite. That's sort of like the ideal, right? That's the ideal. Let's get back to the time when there's a sole voice that gives out the news to the American people, and the American people just eat it up, right? But that's not good. It's not good, and it's not good because what you need competition. You need small news, you need big news, you need national size news, and you need them all competing and contrasting, and you need them bickering with one another, and you need them judging each other, because through that there is a corrective process. So when CNN, for example, runs something and Fox News disagrees with it, then people, if they are balanced, watching different sources of news, can see, oh, here's a criticism. Do I agree with the criticism or do I not? And by having all types of different news sources, then people can get a more balanced view of what is actually taking place, because what you're trying to do with the news is you're trying to grasp onto the closest reality that matches what is true. That's the goal, but it's impossible to do. It's impossible to get actual reality because the world is too big and too complex. It's too much. And so if you have a monolith where you have, let's say, one or two or three network news programs out there, and they're providing all, and maybe you add a couple of the print news to it, they cannot cover, for example, the stuff that's in entertainment. They can't cover the business of the entertainment. And those entities are controlled by corporations. Does a corporation report news which damages the corporation and therefore those who are investing in the news? The answer to that is almost never. So you need non-corporate news entities that are out there reporting independently. So all of this is counter to what Iger wants to deliver in the beginning, but which he begins to have to slide towards because Stewart pushes him. And Iger is not a dumb person. Iger is a fantastically brilliant person. Iger knows everything that I've just said. He could teach a college course on this. He oversaw ABC News for 30 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and as you said, and for the people out there watching, just so they understand, just because you think a guy made bad decisions at Disney or you hated the job he did there, doesn't mean he's stupid. And that's something for a lot of folks out there that like to critique a lot of what Iger did, including myself. You got to remember, like you said, the guy is smart. So let's play a little bit of this back end here, because I think this is to the point that you were talking about, and then I want to tie it into some more recent things that we've seen with Disney.
Don't you think coverage can influence behavior? Can news influence behavior?
And that's a great question from Stewart, and he hits him with this. And this is, look, you can see his mouth right. He's really thinking about this. He is really struggling with how to answer that one, and not
partially because he doesn't know where that's going.
Right.
Remember the game? The game is, how hard does this guy want to hit me now? I thought I was coming in for a hug, and I'm getting stung.
Yeah.
Where is he going to sting me? Is this going to be, am I going to come out with a few nicks, a few bruises, or is he going for the big one? Does he want to take me down and that be the big news of the day? So,
yeah. And again, we don't know what was edited out, if anything, and we may never know.
Sure, I can. Absolutely. Which is why I think it's so important for news to act responsibly. Look, it has just as much a power, just as it has a power to do good, it has a power to do bad.
What can be done to manage it more responsibly?
It's managed responsibly by some organizations, and by others, it's not. Look.
Boom.
And
there's the switch.
Yep. And this is where the whole, let's start talking about Fox, and then, then other places like MSNBC and CNN, and he doesn't name anybody. Well, Jon Stewart, to be fair, brings up Fox News and Roger Ailes. No other channels by name are mentioned, but when Iger jumps in and he starts talking about, and other channels went to the left, you know damn well who he's talking about.
And so let's ponder this for a minute too, because and some people who are viewing are going to disagree with this, but we all know that there are news sources and commentary sources that are sometimes in the middle, although that is rare. In the middle is probably the most rare area that a news organization would be.
I would agree.
But to the left, to the right, to the far left, to the far right. Let's say that you are a liberal person, and let's say that you despise, let's use Breitbart as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if Breitbart is right in your viewpoint as a liberal 2% of the time? If they're right 2% of the time, and that 2% matters, and that 2% would not be heard otherwise, should Breitbart exist? Now that goes the opposite way, right? So let's say that you're a staunch conservative, and let's say that you really hate the Huffington Post. What if it's right 2% of the time? What if you need that 2% of the time? These gentlemen who are having this conversation, they can think at that level, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've played at that level. They have played with people at the highest level of politics on both sides. They're pretending, well, Iger wanted to pretend, right? Wanted to pretend that this was an elementary level issue. He's being forced into a much deeper conversation.
Yeah, indeed. And he wasn't expecting it at all.
People are not held accountable for inaccuracies. So there's that issue. And then there's the whole issue of profiting from, I'll call it inaccuracy. In other words,
right,
from opinion and from, presenting things in an inaccurate fashion. I think if you're looking at overall the pot of that isn't considered news today, it's a problem.
And remember, the whole time he's talking about this is that ABC, of course, is above this level of conversation when it comes to integrity of news.
And because he was able to navigate that.
Right.
Because he was able to direct that and put the personnel in who they float in some ethereal plane of news where they are above all the other news organizations.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, at this point, when he's talking about, he is not talking about ABC. He's talking about, well, we did a good job. But everybody else, okay, John, I'll give you that. They all these other guys have a lot of problems.
and let's think about this too for a minute. So we live in a world where when I came on here, we were talking about ABC News and a story that they killed on purpose, and we know that now. And they did it for personal gain for the corporation, right? I did not say the person's name who was the main suspect in that, right?
Correct.
I didn't do that for a reason. Now, this is my first time with you on YouTube, but I am still savvy enough to know that I don't need to say that man's name, or else we're going to do some post-production.
Right.
Okay. We live in a world that is censored, where the truth is censored. And so it's important to understand where we are and what they are arguing for when they argue for news that is accurate, but which faces no serious competition, especially from non-corporate competition, and when they are arguing that they have been accurate in the past. I would ask everybody who's watching this video, how accurate has the news been in the past? I don't think that you could have watched any network or read any news in the past 3 or 4 years, or maybe longer, and thought, I'm getting the closest depiction of reality that I could receive.
Yeah, and I think at some point in this interview, it might have been at the very beginning, maybe at the very end, but Jon Stewart even makes a remark to Robert Iger that, people's perception of the news media is, it rates somewhere, and this is, as Jon Stewart put it, somewhere between like Congress and cockroaches. I don't remember if my cockroaches or something else.
It's there with root canals, in my opinion.
Yeah, pretty much. That is people's opinion of it. And for all of the griping and hand-wringing for, folks like Iger that are complaining about, well, we're okay, but everybody else sucks. Or that, one of the big problems, of course, is YouTubers and social media news outlets and all this kind of stuff, they're not held to the same kind of high standards, right? And this is not just a Robert Iger thing. That is the opinion of any quote unquote professional journalist out there. They look down upon people that aren't part of that club. And so
let's think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
So let's go down that road. So let's say that I went to an Ivy League school to be a journalist. And let's say that I'm making a salary that is less than I may have anticipated. And then let's say that I flip over to YouTube and Valliant Renegade is kicking my butt when it comes to exposing the news about the entertainment industry and its funding and why things are happening the way they are behind the industry that produces culture, let's say. Now, how vindictive might I feel if I have went to school and I've obtained a job and nobody cares really about what I'm writing, versus a guy who is intrinsically better than I am at that and is on YouTube, and I can't get there. I can't build the subscriber base that someone else can, but I feel entitled to it. And those corporations, so that's at the lowest level, right? So that's at the individual level. You build that up, though. You go up to the corporate level. How are they feeling if their news organizations are facing competition? And this is not talking about you specifically, but if they're facing competition from a guy in his garage with a green screen, right? And it's not even a green screen. It's a piece of green tablecloth that he bought at Walmart, okay? And he's getting tens of thousands of views, and I'm hiding my numbers for my news organization. So you can imagine why they would be upset with that, right?
Yep.
It's a paradigm shift, and they don't like that paradigm shift.
No, it's, people use the term gatekeeping quite often these days when it comes to video games or Star Wars or anything like that. But it's gatekeeping at its apex is what we see from what the news media tries to do. Make sure you stay subscribed to this channel and have the notifications turned on. There are going to be several more conversations coming over the next few weeks between WDW Pro and myself regarding a variety of topics. This was merely an opening salvo. We have a lot to get into, a lot to discuss, far more than could be covered in a single YouTube video. We recorded last Saturday night for over 2 hours. And we have another several hours ahead of us in conversation just to get started. So please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And like I said, have those notifications turned on because you don't want to miss any of this. This has been a Valliant Renegade exclusive first look inside that Park Place and WDW Pro. Good to see everybody, and take care.